Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. A bit of a different video today because I have a very special guest. Today I am joined by Dr. Megan Rossi, also known as the Gut Health Doctor on social media, so if you don't follow her, you know what to do. Megan, would you like to introduce yourself properly? Tell everyone a little bit about you and what you do.
Hey guys, as you may have known already, I am Australian. My accent's slightly on the bogan side of life. So I moved over to London, or the UK, around 2 years ago. And back in Australia, I was a dietitian and nutritionist, and I did a PhD in the area of gut health, which is why I'm so incredibly fascinated by it. And now in the UK, I work across research, so I do a lot of gut health research, and then I have a gut health clinic as well. And more recently, I've moved into food industry, looking at gut health friendly meals, which again, absolutely loving.
So if you're in the UK, Megan has designed a menu for Leon, and Leon, especially in London, is a really popular, healthy kind of fast food restaurant, isn't it? It's like a cafe.
There's 50 in the UK.
50 in the UK?
And we're expanding to Europe too.
Okay, well, Europe, look out, because Leon is coming for you. It is some of my favourite food to get on the go, and I've eaten Megan's meze salad. I was telling her before we were filming, I've had your meze salad 3 times in the last 10 days.
Yeah, be careful, it can be really addictive.
It's the hummus and the falafel.
Yeah.
Like, they're so good.
Obviously making everything from scratch at home is ideal, but I just think when you're in a rush, which a lot of us are, it's a great, healthier alternative to other takeaways.
So I asked you guys on Instagram to leave your gut health queries and questions and dilemmas on one of my posts, and I have been overwhelmed with how many great questions you have provided. So many questions that I'm fascinated to hear the answer to. So we may as well just get on with it. Are you ready, Nick?
Drum
Are you ready,
roll. What's the first one?
So the first question comes from Jenny. She says, my own gut health is something I really want to focus on and improve, but generally I don't know where to start. Poo diary, bloating diary, are there any good starting points and tips to start monitoring your own gut health, and from there being able to ascertain the next steps? I feel like this is such a useful question for everyone.
Yeah, that is actually an incredible and well written too. Thanks you for that
Jenny.
question. So Jenny, it's really quite dependent according to what you want to focus on. If you want to improve your gut health because you've got tummy issues, then I definitely suggest doing a food and a symptom diary. So 7 days is typically the best, and what you do as you eat food, you just write it on one side, and then as you have symptoms, write on the other side. According to the time of the day, you actually get those symptoms. And then what I recommend is that you do actually go and see a dietitian or a registered nutritionist to help you sort through. And the reason that is that food is so complex. It's not as simple as, oh look, this has got wheat in it, and wheat's in all these foods. It's usually other things at play. So seeing someone can really help, pinpoint what element of the food, is causing you those symptoms. If it's not about symptoms and you just want to really, maximize your gut health, then I don't think you need to fixate on a diary or anything like that. The key to maximizing your gut health, as we currently understand, is eating a diverse range of plant-based foods. So that's really trying to get as many types of different plant-based foods, whether it's, I like to say, aiming for around 20 to 30 different types of plant-based foods a week. So Tally, how many have you had this week? If you've had a messy salad, you've had 20.
Oh, 22. Perfect. I think I've actually had that twice in the last week, so I'm on my 40.
So it's not just about, getting fruit and veg, it's really trying to get different types, because each different type of fruit and veg have really different types of nutrients in it, including phytochemicals and antioxidants. So that's how you maximize it, and our gut bugs love antioxidants and things like that. They feed off it and they crave it.
I'm going to add in a question there, because you spoke about plant-based sources.
Yeah.
Do you find that in general plant-based eating, it's a kind of a real popular thing right now? I feel like it's having its moment and everyone's going plant-based, which isn't a bad thing. I think it's great for the environment, but for our bodies, is it better for our bodies as well than having a high meat consumption?
Yeah. So when I say plant-based foods, I think that's the nutrition or dietitian in me coming out, meaning that the base of your food should be plants, but I definitely think having fish, a little bit of meat, a little bit of chicken, eggs, dairy, all that sort of stuff is also quite beneficial.
Yeah.
In terms of your gut health, large amounts of any meat is not typically a good idea, and the reason that is because we don't absorb it all and it gets into our large intestine where we've got the trillions of bacteria living, and they ferment it, and what they ferment it into is some waste products which aren't very healthy.
Okay.
So large portions isn't a great idea, but 80 grams in a sitting is a great idea.
Interesting, very interesting. So you guys might have been following my personal journey for a while, and I've had my gut issues throughout the years. And more recently this year, I started taking probiotics. And Leah also asked about probiotics, and I feel like a lot of us are starting to use that as a way to improve our gut health. So she says, should probiotics be taken for a long period of time? And she also talks about antibiotics, so I want to talk about this as well. Also, I took antibiotics continuously for years when I was a teenager to try and treat my skin. I think this has messed up my gut. Any specific advice to combat the effects of this?
So, when it comes to probiotics, the evidence currently suggests that if you're healthy, so you don't have any tummy issues and you don't really have any other illnesses, taking a probiotic probably isn't going to be doing you a lot of good. It's not going to do you any harm, so definitely if you want to try it, you can, but probably not a good use of your money. However, there are some conditions in which we know probiotics can be beneficial for. So one is traveler's diarrhea. So if you're going away to like a third world country, have you ever had it before?
Yes, I went to Africa last year and I got a stomach flu. And it was my first time and it was just awful. And I felt so weak and tired for that whole time after because my gut was so poor.
Yeah, it can totally ruin a holiday. So what the evidence suggests that if you are going to somewhere that you're at that risk of taking a probiotic at the start of your holiday and all the way through your holiday, really reduces your risk of getting that traveler's diarrhea.
Good top tip there. So if you're going on holidays anywhere else, like take it whilst you're there, to like as a precautionary.
And the same with if you're taking antibiotics and you likely get diarrhea. So if you've had antibiotics before and you got diarrhea associated with that, then taking a probiotic along with the antibiotic can actually combat that. But remember, if you're taking the antibiotic and the probiotic opposite times of the day, because the antibiotic kills the bacteria, so it kills the probiotic. So opposite times in the day to make sure that the probiotic still lives within you. Now, the other condition where there is a bit of evidence for taking a probiotic is irritable bowel syndrome.
Yes.
So the evidence suggests that if you take a probiotic, you reduce your risk by about 20%. So, it's not going to cure everyone, but there is a little bit of benefit. Now, the last thing on probiotics is that not all probiotics are the same. So each probiotic contains different types of strains, and it's kind of like comparing an elephant and a mouse. They're both mammals, but they're very different. They function very different. So you can't just expect to take any probiotic and, it to help with IBS or it to help with your traveler's diarrhea. So there is a really fantastic website, and I'll give you the address.
I'll put the link below.
And what it does, it shows you which probiotic brands have actually been tested in different types of clinical trials and shown whether it was positive or not. So you can go, look, okay, I've got IBS, I want to find which product I should get. And there it'll show you which ones have been positive, because it's really important we go to clinical trials, but otherwise, how do you know which one to take?
There were other questions of people asking about brands. Is there a brand that you particularly recommend? So
for IBS in particular, there's been 3 brands which have shown some benefit in clinical trials that are available in the UK, and that's VSL3, Simprove and Alpharex. So they're the 3 in the UK available, worth giving a shot. Now, if you're taking probiotics, what I recommend is you take them for at least 4 weeks, so you give them a good shot. And also I like you to write a little diary of your symptoms before and then after you've taken them. So you've got more of an objective idea of whether it's really helping you or whether you're just wasting your money.
Or sometimes is it just a placebo effect where you've gone, I've taken this, it solved that problem, when in fact it could have all been psychological.
Yeah, absolutely.
My IBS developed post-pregnancy. Any guidance for trying to reintroduce food groups? I currently have to avoid dairy, gluten, soya, and a few other strange things like potatoes and cauliflower. Any advice would be appreciated.
I
think this is hard because I've noticed myself, I found a lot of people are cutting things out. For example, for 2 years, I cut out gluten for 2 years because I felt that was a massive trigger to my IBS. Later in life, I've realised that gluten could be a trigger if I'm super stressed. So there's certain things I have to avoid when I feel a certain way.
Yeah.
But generally I can take on anything.
Yeah.
So I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts on
Yeah,
this.
absolutely. And there's many different types and causes of IBS.
Yeah.
So just for people who don't know what IBS is, it's a chronic functional condition in which to get a diagnosis for IBS, you need to make sure you rule out celiac disease and inflammatory bowel disease. And to do that, you just go to your GP and they'll do a fecal, so a stool test, yay, and a blood test, and then they can rule out and confirm that you don't have them. So if you don't have them, but you're getting tummy pain at least 1 day a week, every week for the last 6 months, plus your stools are kind of funny and that's related to the pain in some way, where they're really loose or really hard or they mix up. So they're the two main criteria, and you have to have them for at least 6 months for a diagnosis of IBS. So that's what it is. So it's kind of funny stools as well as having tummy pain. Now, like I said, IBS can be caused by so many different things. So, you know, some hormonal triggers. If you've had a gut infection, you can get what we call post-infectious IBS is another cause, and stress is another big major one we find, because our gut and our brain are so interconnected. They tell each other to do crazy things.
Don't they always call your gut your second brain? I've heard that a lot.
Yeah.
And I think I've personally found, from like a very anecdotal point of view, I found that to be the case for me.
Yeah.
And actually, the less I stressed about food that might trigger me, the more I was able to digest things a lot more comfortably.
Absolutely. And some people even call IBS depression of your second brain.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But, you know, everyone's IBS can be
totally
caused by different things. So when we think about IBS and where the evidence is at for the dietary management, diet does seem to play a huge role in triggering symptoms, and it can be really helpful for managing your IBS. Not necessarily curing it, but definitely managing your symptoms. So there's two different things. We first, as a dietitian, I'd go through first-line dietary advice, and that's when I'd look at things like, are you having the right types of fibre or too much fibre? Are you having regular meals, or are you eating too fast? What about dairy? Are you lactose intolerant? Alcohol, fatty food, spicy food, all the common things I would look at and see whether any of those are triggers. Now, the second step is where we talk about a low FODMAP diet. And you only go on to that if the first step didn't work for you. But around 50% of people with IBS actually respond to the first line therapy. It's only when that doesn't work we go on to the second, and that's a low FODMAP diet, which it sounds like one of your followers has. So what we do with the low FODMAP diet is it's really important to know that it's actually a 3-step process. A lot of people think it's just a diet, but it's not. So the first step is 4 to 6 weeks of really strict exclusion of FODMAPs from the diet, and then the second step is systematically reintroducing these in a way we identify the single triggers and dose escalating over 3 days. And that is really quite complex, which is why we recommend you do it with a dietitian. So to fit mummy, twin...
she wants to reintroduce food groups.
So the thing that's really important is doing it in a systematic way and finding out the component of that food. So I do, recommend that you go and see a dietitian to help identify which elements, because excluding those, really quite important food groups, could be putting you at high risk of nutrition deficiencies, which is...
And I think I've seen as well, the thing that's common is that people think FODMAP is just another diet to go on, and it's like another way of living, but like you say, it's not. It's a very short-term way to combat something so you can have a long-term result.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's like 6 weeks, and then you always recommend getting it reassessed.
Yeah, you then systematically reintroduce, and that's the second phase, which usually lasts about 3 months or so, depending on how many foods you need to reintroduce. And then the third phase is what we call personalised and slightly a modified low FODMAP diet, because it's a lot higher than a strict, but it might not be back to your normal level, but it'll identify which of the types of FODMAPs you're more sensitive to. Not that you can't have any, but not having too much on the one day.
Okay, this kind of goes on to that. It's talking about another kind of intolerance. If you're lactose intolerant, like I am, is taking lactase tablets okay for good gut health, or is it just like a plaster for the problem and you should avoid dairy altogether?
Look, lactose intolerance is actually really quite common.
Yeah.
And what that means is that on your gastrointestinal lining, you don't have this enzyme called lactase. And the lactase enzyme breaks down the lactose, enabling you to absorb it. and then getting into your blood, and your cells go and use that for energy. So if you've got lactose intolerance, that means that you don't have those enzymes, or very few of them, and therefore you can't digest that lactose. It then makes its way down into your large intestine, where those trillions of microbes live, and they rapidly ferment it, and that's when you can get things like your bloating and your diarrhea associated with lactose intolerance. So if you are suffering from that, but you really enjoy lactose foods that are high in lactose, then taking a lactase enzyme is completely fine, because it's just supplementing what unfortunately your body doesn't produce.
Okay.
So that's completely fine. It's not, covering any band-aid or anything. It's just supplementing into your body what you're kind of deficient in.
Sammy Alice asked a really interesting question, which we kind of touched on before, but she says, is there a large part that is psychological? I have reactions sometimes to foods, and other times they don't bother me. Could there be a lot more reasons than intolerances, more likely stress or low sleep?
Absolutely, you definitely hit the nail on the head there. There's so many different causes to the IBS, and stress, I think for me, and what I find in my clinic with a lot of my clients, is it is such, a common one. And that's definitely why the low FODMAP diet is not for everyone. Because for some people, it actually promotes more stress in their life, because it's really quite a restrictive and difficult diet. So
because then you get stressed about eating out, about going to other people's for food, about not being in control of your food, and then that's a whole other can of worms of your relationship with food.
Absolutely, and that food fixation and all that sort of stuff. There's also been a super cool study where they actually they randomized patients with IBS to either the low FODMAP diet or hypnotherapy, which is a type of special, cognitive behavior therapy style counseling. And what they found, that both were equally effective in improving people's IBS symptoms. So they both had a 70% response rate, highlighting that the brain is such a powerful role in a lot of the IBS. And that's not to say that it's just in your head, which that really upsets me when I hear people say that, because it's not. Like, it's this gut-brain connection. So your brain's actually telling your gut to do things, and they're physically getting bloating, and they're physically getting diarrhea and things like that. So they're getting the symptoms. It's not that they're making them up.
I think that's so interesting. I really started developing my IBS when I was at drama school. I was like super stressful environment, and now I've learned to manage my stress a lot more. I know when my tummy's bloated, and I know why, and I know how I can kind of deal with it. But this leads on to a couple of my own questions.
Yeah.
So what do you, and there was a lot of people asking all sorts of questions, so I hope that this answers your question if we haven't picked it out specifically. I find I get bloated, maybe once a week I'll get a really bad bloat if I'm tired. A lot of it's overworked and overtired, and I know it's self-inflicted. How can I make that better? What do you recommend as a way to treat the bloating once it's occurred?
Once it's occurred, it's a really tricky one, because I think the cause of the bloating is what we need to focus on, and the cause can be so many different things. So it can be some people, if they just get really constipated, so they don't open up their bowels for more than 3 days, then the food kind of gets stuck in their large intestine, and the bacteria ferment that, and that when they ferment that, they release gas, and that's one of the causes of that bloating. The other thing is there a particular element of food which you are actually intolerant to that you don't know and you're having it? For example, is it the lactose? In which case you're malabsorbing it in your small intestine, it gets into your large bowel, and the bacteria then ferment that, again releasing the gas. Now lactose also draws more water into your colon, so you get the bloating with the fluid. And then other things like stress. So if you are super stressed when you're having this one meal and you're not chewing your food, you're malabsorbing a lot, again getting to your large bowel where the bacteria rapidly ferment it, causing that gas. So once you've already got the bloating, there's not like a quick fix. There's no tablet that's going to get rid of it, unfortunately. It's more about understanding what caused it in the first place, and then trying to prevent that, perhaps.
Sometimes I find it's even my clothes. Like this pair of jeans I have on right now, sometimes they are not my best friend, and I can't wear them because I know they're going to make me bloated.
Yeah, it's so funny you say that, because there was a physician, so a doctor, I think it was in the 80s, actually made up this syndrome called tight pants syndrome. Because people, it was fashionable at that stage to have really, really, really tight pants, and a lot of people were coming with gut symptoms, bloating, and all your nerves in your gut are like retaliating, and they get inflamed, and then they bloat. So that's actually a thing.
Okay, so I'm not making it up then.
Yeah,
I do find certain times I'm just like, I just need to get these trousers off and I'm fine.
Yeah, and a lot of us wear, you know, gym clothes that are really tight all day, and that's actually really not good. It's putting too much pressure on you. So loose clothes are definitely...
as soon as I get in and I'm in my PJs,
I'm
good.
Too.
I'm good.
And probably another thing that a lot of people, or causes a lot of people's bloating, is when they have a whole lot of either sugar-free food. So if they're dieting, a lot of these proteins actually contain polyols, so types of carbohydrates that are poorly digested. So if you have large amounts of them, they taste sweet but you don't absorb them, that's why they're low calorie.
So is that like a diet food? Would you say like a diet soda type drink? Or is it more like a Weight Watchers yogurt kind of vibe?
Yeah, each product actually contains different types of artificial sweeteners, and things like even the sugar-free chewing gum and things like that contain what we call these polyols, like xylitol and things like that. So look on the packet and see if it contains xylitol. A lot of protein bars also contain that. And the reason why it doesn't provide the calories is because your small intestine doesn't absorb it, but it gets into your large bowel. Again, bacteria rapidly ferment that, and that causes the gas.
And in a protein bar instance, I think a lot of people put it down to whey protein being the trigger, but actually it can be the sweeteners in the protein bars. So now we've spoken about all the reasons why you might be bloated and gassy and what you can do when you're gassy. How can we just make our lifestyle in general gut friendly? Like, what can we do? What can we eat? What can we do to try and prevent any issues and to just maintain a happy, healthy gut?
I think one of the main ones is taking your time to eat. So eating when your gut is relaxed and chewing your food properly.
Wasn't it, we went for breakfast once and I think you said like 20 times. So sometimes I do just sit and count 20 times.
It's really difficult though. Give it a shot. If you're a fast eater,
it's hard.
Just count. And a lot of us chew, like sometimes I catch myself if I'm in a rush and going to a meeting, it's like four chews and then it's swallowed.
And it's more for your body to break down then, isn't it?
The other thing I think when it comes to just general gut health, so one of our gut bacteria's favourite food is dietary fibre. And that is found in a lot of our plant-based foods. So having as much different types of dietary fibre, because each food's got different types as well as other things like antioxidants, etc. So diet diversity is shown to be the best one, which I spoke about before.
Kind of like eating the rainbow, when we said that, like colour, like all different colours of fruit and veg on your plate, and different fruits and all sorts of different things, because they all have their own thing they bring to the party, so I was thinking.
Exactly right. It's kind of like a rainforest. You want it to be really diverse in your gut bacteria.
I love that. Your gut is like a rainforest. I've noticed there's a lot of gut-friendly products that have been coming onto the market. For example, I'm a massive kombucha fan. Besides kombucha, is there anything else we should like really be including? Should we even be including kombucha? What do you think?
So when it comes to fermented foods and drinks, they've been, you know, used in our diet for thousands of years and have been suggested to have a benefit. However, the scientist in me says that there's actually not many clinical trials which have suggested a benefit. But I think that fermented foods taste fantastic. They have been used, you know, by our ancestors for so many, you know, thousands of years with some benefits. So why not include them?
It's like there's no harm including
There is no harm, especially because they taste fantastic, especially kombucha. I'm a big fan, and I found that a lot of my clients have been able to switch, you know, they've been like soft drink addicts and they've been able to switch to kombucha, which is a lower sugar alternative, which is going to have a whole lot of other benefits as well, not just to do with the bacteria and the yeast that are in it.
And kombucha does have sugar in it, like that is part of the process of how to make it, but we've spoken about this before, so I hope I'm going to get this right, but you kind of said to me at the time that there's sugars that your body actually needs. So I know people demonise sugar, but is that right, that it's a bit more beneficial, or if I misconstrued that?
Slight misconstrued. No, it's true that, you know, we should not demonise sugar. You know, natural sugars are completely fine, but the sugar in kombucha, so we've got it here. Really excited.
Oh, this is a massive jar. Can you see that? What's that thing floating around? That's the magic.
Yes, what's it called? Do we know?
Scooby.
Yes!
And I know this because sometimes you get a big lump in it and I'm really like, just down it.
Just do it, it's good for you.
That's what I mean.
It is though, it is good because in that Scooby, which stands for Symbiotic Colony of Bacteria and Yeast, so it's an acronym. That's where all the bacteria and yeast live. So you can't actually see bacteria and yeast by the eye, But you can see this big white thing because it's like they build this little home. That's like a little fiber raft. They all live inside. So that's what we call the SCOBY. And to make kombucha, you add the SCOBY with some water, green tea, black tea, and sugar. Now, what the yeast and the bacteria do is that they actually ferment that sugar. So they eat all the sugar and turn it into really beneficial things like special types of acids that we know are really good for us, as well as carbon dioxide, which gives it that fizz that we all love.
Yes.
In fact, soft drinks actually came from this fermentation method. Although now the companies have been like, don't worry about slow fermentation, let's just pump some carbon dioxide in instead of the traditional way. So
is it right that that's a similar way to how they made, like, it's very close to like cider and beer?
Absolutely, it is. Yes, because the yeast can produce some alcohol, but that's where the bacteria come in and they ferment that alcohol into other acids. So it can have little bits of alcohol naturally in it. So I wouldn't be giving it large amounts to kids.
Yeah, but it's a nice thing to have. I've personally found I think living in London, I've got a bit of luxury. Kombucha is becoming quite easily available. They've got it in Leon now, don't they?
They do.
They have it in Leon. So like, I know I plan a lot of my meetings and my days around spots where I can get a kombucha, and I'm not even joking. Because I know that I'd rather have that than a Diet Coke, which I know is not the most beneficial thing for me, but I know that this fizzy drink is beneficial and it tastes, to me, even better. Yeah,
absolutely. The other thing though, just so people are aware, is that kombucha contains caffeine in it. So, you know, if you're having, if you want to go to bed, I wouldn't go and have a big lot of kombucha before you go to bed.
Amazing. I think we've covered so many bases.
Yeah. There is a lot more, and we'll have to do a sequel in the future.
Yes.
But for now, I think enough information. Otherwise, you guys are going to be like, I hate her. I don't want to hear anymore.
Please let me know what you thought in the comments below. If you've enjoyed seeing Megan here, every time we meet, I am fascinated to pick your brain and hear what's kind of the latest research and, you know, things that I can do and that we can encourage other people to do. I think it's so good, the work you're doing. I think gut health is really coming to the forefront of nutrition, and I truly believe if you have a happy gut, that really has a great impact on your lifestyle, on your training, on your energy levels. So it's not just something that's focused on gut health, like that. Looking after your gut is looking after you as a whole. So
absolutely,
it's really important. So I really hope you've enjoyed having Megan on my channel. It's been so nice to have a guest here. I haven't had a guest in a while. So thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for putting up with me and my accent, guys.